A confluence of romance, influence of coincidence. Three couples united by deity, farsighted. Began as a simple trip, three Estolian men seeking the glow of an aura.
The transition from one generation to the next is perhaps the most formalized ceremonial aspect of Estolia. While there have been those times when the spirit moves the keeper to adjust the timeline, normally the series of events follows a set pattern. At dawn, the day before the heir apparent turns 29, the keeper dons once again the sash of office of last resort, so that the future last resort and the heir will both be reminded, daily, of their obligations and of the many promises of deity that will be theirs if the heir is willing to keep the promise of Zacharias. Meredith Zakarian, History of Estolia.
Zeke was grateful to return to his office. Kedarin accompanied him to the temple. Sunrise was still an hour away, he judged. When the carriage reached the entrance to the temple, he did not exit right away. Instead, he leaned over and kissed Kedarin, grateful that he was home again. Reluctantly, he pulled back.
Go on, my love,
she said.
I know you need to recharge by contact with your other love. I shall visit the families in the elder housing.
He chuckled. She was right. With a sigh of happiness, he climbed out of the carriage and then waved her on. The familiar elements of the temple, that Kedarin called his other love, left him feeling very peaceful. Subconsciously, he made a mental list of those things that made it so unique. Acolytes stationed at the main entrance, the unique sense associated with millennia of devoted care and continual use of their spiritual home, the murmur of voices in the various classrooms in their pre-breakfast lessons, and the exquisite beauty of his office with the statue of Zacharias by his desk. The cracked conference table gave him a sense of permanence, as if nothing could ever impact the substance of Estolia, in the way strife once fractured the table, but could not destroy it. The ritual and tradition established by their ancestors were so ingrained in the temple. It was hard to imagine the capitulos in the beginning when they were just being established. How could their ancestors understand so thoroughly the needs of nearly 3,000 years of Estolian society? They could not realize how it would bring solace and comfort to those in despair, and structure and meaning to all who entered the temple. When he reached his office, he saw that an acolyte was just setting a tray on his desk. A small vase with flowers complemented the fragrant Mayberry blossom tea, and both were delightful accents next to the small bowl of yogurt, grains, and fruit. He thanked the acolyte, grateful to be alone once he left. He took a deep breath and soaked up the ambience while sipping his tea. Nothing in the greater world came close to the way Estolia was steeped in the blessings of deity. In just over 2 weeks, Nico was to take over the keeping of the soul of Estolia. Zeke was reluctant to part with the position. It permeated his life so thoroughly that he could not imagine remaining meekly at home and being relegated to the role of second consul. He smiled to himself at the thought. Nico was going to be a fine keeper. He had the solid, settled, rational outlook necessary for the leader of their faith in these turbulent times. Thinking of Nico reminded him that he had not yet checked his messages that morning. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and saw that he received several texts. The most recent one was from Nico. He had found his Kaylee. Reluctantly, Nico had flown to Los Angeles to meet the Zakarian jet, only to meet Kenzie O'Rourke in the airport concourse. There was some hint that she would surprise Zeke, which did not worry him. But he could also sense that Nico was worried about convincing her to share her life with him. Zeke experienced a twinge of disquiet. Nico, with his extraordinary good looks, always seemed in command of every situation. Estolians and non-Estolians alike looked at him and saw a man who had it all, a high station in life and the sure charm to reel in a beautiful woman. But Nico was aware of his own strengths and weaknesses and felt inadequate for the role he was born to fill. Zeke's youngest daughter, Miracle, had more obvious spirituality at 12 years than Nico had at nearly 30. This would be a test for Nico, a time of coming into his own, learning that his particular strengths were utterly necessary in his role. He would not rule alone, something Zeke made certain Nico knew and understood before they parted in California. Zeke would support him for the duration of his tenure, but Nico would add his unique stamp to the hereditary role of keeper, growing into the position in his way. Now Nico and Kenzie would arrive within the hour, with a week to go before Nico's birthday. He sighed and looked around the office. He would have to postpone settling back into his normal routine. He called his nephew Leon to let him know that, as king, he would need to be there to greet the arriving airplane. He hung up once he was assured that they would leave immediately so they could arrive at the Amador airport before sunrise. This was what the transition was known for. Turbulence beginning a year before the heir apparent turned 30 and coming to a solid closure 7 days after the birth of the new keeper's firstborn son. The average Estolian was more concerned with the wedding of the heir apparent, proof that the promise of Zacharias was kept for yet another generation, but for the ruling family, the intricacies of the entire transition were all fraught with their own challenges and rewards. He took a deep breath and climbed to his feet, pausing to rub at his leg. The ache was his most acute reminder that he was nearly 62. The carriages arrived soon after the jet landed. Nico sent Zeke a text to tell him that they were both freshening up before meeting the rest of the Strayaran. Zeke got the sense that there was something that Nico was not telling him, and he wondered what he could be concealing. Zeke stood with his brother Isaiah, the former king, and with his nephew Leon, the current king, while they waited for Nico and his bride-to-be to exit from the airplane sitting on the tarmac. Zeke commended Nico's superb sense of timing when they exited the airplane and descended the stairs in time to step onto the tarmac at the exact instant the sun tipped over the edge of the world, bringing it, and Kenzie O'Rourke, to bright color. Color. The woman with Nico had hair that was a literal rainbow of colors. She contrasted vividly with Nico, who was wearing the somber business suit Zeke had recommended he wear while traveling via commercial airline. Zeke knew instantly that this woman was exactly what both Nico and Estolia needed as they marched towards the future.
Rebellious princess.